Hi, everyone. Mindrolling, and I'm back, Raghu, and I have the pleasure today to have a chat with Kimberly Brown. And Kimberly has written a book around happy relationships, which has lots of great advice and um, and insightful points that might help everyone because we've all got relationship issues one way or the other, even however subtle they may be.
Mm.
Um, and I, I'd like to hear how you even came into any of this. Related to, of course, I know your Buddhism is your practice, I believe, and I want to, we are doing, let me tell you, this interested in me. I had interest here, shall we say, and when I saw the book, because we are doing a course, an online course. Actually, it's the first time we're announcing it. I don't, whenever this comes out, but it's called Intimacy with All Things, Cultivating Conscious Relationships in Daily Life. So I thought, wow, okay, this is apropos, and we can kind of look through that lens. This is a quote: "To be enlightened is to be intimate with all things," from Dogen Zenji. Great Dogen quote. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of we'll surround ourselves within that intimacy going forward, and maybe through the lens of some of the things you discuss in the book, we'll be able to reference that. I think it'll be cool. But how did what happened to even let you know, wow, there is a place where I always call it where one could be happy? Because as a teenager, I was really unhappy, and that was always on my mind until I saw the potential one day was through Mayor Baba. I don't know if you know who that saint is. Yeah, you do, in India. And there was that beautiful picture of him smiling and going, "Don't worry, be happy." That Bobby McFerrin took it up, I guess. That great song. So how did you get to the point where you realize, well, maybe there is another plane of consciousness?
Yeah, it took me a little longer. I was, I had a really chaotic childhood and a lot of what we now call trauma, but I was really struggling as a young adult. And I was very lucky to find a really compassionate therapist, and she really helped me. And then I trained to be a therapist, to be a psychoanalytic therapist. And at some point during that training, I remember I didn't want to diagnose my clients anymore. I
No,
was
yeah.
clinically supervised, and I kept hearing people. What I felt a lot of their suffering was just not just. It was very painful, but it was a lot about a story that wasn't true, and I
Mm.
didn't feel. Um,
Yeah.
that it was right to diagnose someone with this or with that. I just felt, well, we're all struggling, we're all suffering. But this was long before Buddhism, and I left that profession. I never actually finished. I just studied for 4 years with it, and it really
Really?
helped me in many ways. But it just was not my way. And actually, my supervisor, she said to me at one point, because one of my clients said to me very poignantly, she said, "Well, do you love me?" And I remember thinking, and I said it very truly because I'd gotten to know her, this young woman, over a year. I said, "Yes, I do love you." And I remember talking to my supervisor, and she said, "Well, Kim, when my clients ask me that, I say, yes, I love you. And the way I'm going to love you is to help you understand you." And
Hmm.
I sat with that for a while. And Raghu, I came to the realization for my own self, the way I'm going to love you is to love you. And it sounds silly or maybe semantics, but it meant a lot to me because it's not about analyzing or giving or transcending. It's about this connection. So years later, um, I started to have panic attacks. Now, I could tell you exactly why. I had all this training, oh, well, when I'm in that situation. Um, and then, but I couldn't steady my mind and I really didn't know what to do. It was really a frightening time. And that's what led me into the Dharma. I just started. Luckily, I live in New York City and you could go, I could any night of the week be with a wonderful teacher at a different Dharma center, which is what I started to do. And, the practices really did help me steady my mind. And I did and do sometimes still have panic attacks, but it's much different.
Hmm.
They're not separate from me.
Hmm.
And they're painful and scary sometimes, but it's a whole different experience, through the lens of the Dharma and through the practice. And to your original quote about Dogen's intimacy with all things,
Hmm.
that's what it means. Even to be intimate with this really painful thing I didn't want. So that really helped. And so I just knew it was my path and off I went and been studying and practicing since. And I feel so lucky.
So you left the therapy business
I
completely.
did. I did. I kind of broke with it. I didn't. I trained for about 4 years. Never clinically was licensed, but I didn't want to diagnose people in that way. It didn't seem right to me. And I'm not throwing shade on therapy because anybody who's listening, I have been really helped by therapy. So I know that it's very, very effective.
Yeah, Ram Dass's famous thing around people asking him, should I do psychotherapy? It'll help on my spiritual path. He said, yeah, if the therapist doesn't think he's a therapist.
Oh, that's it. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's true. That's why, I do speak to many different people who are still using psychoanalysis, helping people. They're analysts. And the way that they've blended in, particularly Buddhists, the Buddhism aspect, more than Hindu. It's a weird thing, but that's true, right? People like Mark Epstein. And I think it's really, really helpful, actually. And it's difficult to find exactly the kind of person that isn't, let's say, that has gone beyond the ego I enough, obviously, not somebody who's enlightened necessarily, because that would be very difficult to find. We can define that too. That's a whole other thing. But, someone who isn't as attached as others
Mm,
may be in terms of thinking they know. You talk about actually in the book, I think, right? About not knowing.
yes.
I love
Yes.
that. And that was a big thing with Bernie Glassman, actually, the Zen priest who died a number of years ago. Yeah, not knowing. What was you talk about it? Because I think it's a nice place to start.
Yeah. I mean, in relationships, this is particularly as people we love and that we're close to, there's often a sense that we already know all about them. We know exactly what Raghu's going to say and do and think.
That's
And
probably true, though. In my
it
case,
is to a certain degree. It doesn't give that person a chance to
right?
change, a chance to reveal different parts of themselves. And it solidifies in our own minds, who this person is, how they're going to react. So part of relationships, I think, it's this view, the Buddhist view of, we know what's happening right now. We can experience it, you know. But to solidify and harden another person and another person's reactions, another person's voice, there's no more freshness, and the relationship can get very stale and predictable, and that's a lot oftentimes resentment comes up. So part of the not knowing is being able to open to what's really there, who the person is right in this moment. Like you said, you might know them real well, might be very similar, it might be what you expected. But other times, that person would like to shift or change or reveal a different side and may feel inhibited from doing that from our own, our reaction to them. So that's part of the practice in the book. How can we, um, it's not like we don't know or I'm not going to know, but it's letting go into right now and whatever happens to be arising in ourselves and in the situation.
Yeah, certainly not assuming and projecting. Let's
Yeah.
start there. That's what we all
Yeah.
do all day, every day. Coming
Yeah.
from the point of view of our story, you talked about, didn't you say about the people that were coming to you? They all have a story, and it's completely ego-centered, narcissistic thing. People talk about, gee, the horror of so and so's a narcissist, a political figure or social media figure, whatever. Uh, that's just somebody who's really let the tiger loose, so to speak. All of us have that self-centered point of view. I did an audio book with another podcast, the movie of me to the movie of
Mm.
we. And, we talked about our own foibles relative to the fact that how we grew up. I mean, you said you came from some very severely traumatic uh, times in your earlier years. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. And this ego, this me, how it manifests, I know you know this, is in suffering. So the stories that people tell me are stories of suffering. I shouldn't be this way. I'm not lovable. Why don't I love myself? They're all painful, you know, and for me, a lot of from my own history, the story that I had was there's something wrong with me. Well, there must be something wrong with me. I wasn't sure what it was. I'm going to look around. I'm going to fix myself. And, then I'm going to be happy and satisfied, you know. And that's the version that I hear from people all the time, you know. And I feel like it's even more intense. We have a whole industry set up to improve yourself, that there's something wrong, that there must be something you should do. I was talking with a young woman in her 20s. She said, yes, my friends and I, we all tell each other, I'm just going to love myself more, but we don't know how to do it. I did the same, Um, and a lot of it, at least for me, the Buddhist path, it's given me tools to do that. Because, you could talk about it all day. I know you know this. You can read every book, but it's really an orientation and an experiential um, practice to, kind of bring that energy into yourself. And that's where that intimacy with all things comes up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to read something from what you wrote, which is to me, and I'm sure to everybody, is the core fundamental uh, reality that we all are in. So you say you likely tend to use the word love a lot. Like, I'm madly in love with them, or I love those shoes. But what you really mean is you have an attraction, a want, or a yearning to possess something or someone. And that is a true line that runs through everybody who's ever been connected to anyone that they care about. And so, of course, Joseph Goldstein has a famous thing that we were working together in Maui, and he was getting driven around with a young guy who was just getting into the path. I've told the story a billion times, but you'll like it. And this kid says, Joseph, you've been doing this for decades. Just give me one thing that you would recommend for me to be able to tread this path. And Joseph just turned to him. He went, stop clinging.
Mm.
Right. And, then I'm madly in love with you is not a possession situation. That's a clinging situation. It's no different than I love those shoes. And when you start to realize that, then something can take place. Is it not so? And you go on to say, in Buddhism, this is called attachment or desirous love, and is often confused with loving kindness, which is the Pali thing, is called metta. The first of the four immeasurables is a powerful force of goodwill given freely without obligation, and it's not transactional. And everything that we do on a day-to-day basis is, I shouldn't say that, not everything. We have natural instincts that carry us beyond the clinging, shall we say, beyond the attachment. Your love bestows goodwill and happiness, and it helps both of you thrive, flourish, and create harmony with each other, your other relationships, your community, and the world, which is this whole idea here that we're talking about intimacy with all things. This kind of true love can be developed and cultivated with attention and practice. So instead of true, I think I would use unconditional. So when Ram Dass went back to India the second time, a number of Westerners didn't go with him, but met up with him in India. He kind of showed us how to find the guru and all that, named Karoli Baba. And we had no idea. I mean, came from the households that we all came from. I mean, for us, it's boomer generation stuff. But not much has changed. I think there has been some change, but for the most part, not much has changed in terms of when we got there and we were brought into Indian families. We were shocked at the level of openness, spaciousness, love, caring. I mean, we just didn't grow up like that. And, my friend Krishnadas says, yeah, they grew up with Hanuman and we grew up with Mickey Mouse. So what do you expect? That kind of thing. But we experienced directly that unconditionality of love, which was exemplified by Neem Karoli Baba and which we had never really experienced before. And I think that's the glue that Dogen was talking about in terms of intimacy with all things, that love.
Yes. And the idea of it, what was interesting to me when I first started, I came to loving kindness practice. I'd been practicing Buddhism for a bit, but I came to that. It was soon after my mother had died, like maybe 3 or 4 months later, and I went on a retreat with Sharon Salzberg up at Insight Meditation Society. And I had an incredible experience. Maybe 3 or 4 days into the practice and loving kindness practice, I just had a sense that I was going to be okay. Even though I was really shook up, I was grieving, I was crying a lot, my mind was very unsteady, and I had thought in weeks before that retreat, I might have to, go to the ER. I had so many intrusive thoughts. It was really a hard time. And
A
just a
lot of
few
a lot of
days.
us think we should get on to the ER sometime.
Yes, and it was very powerful to experience this, not so much experience unconditional love from someone else, but to recognize that I had that in me.
Mm.
Not that it always manifests, and not that I'm like some, pillar of love and light, but to actually tap into that and say, oh, there is a certain okayness here that is abiding, that is not going anywhere, and is not conditioned on anything outside of me. It remains the
Mm.
most transformative, moment of my life. And that's when I started to train in it more. And this idea, like you said, almost everyone I know, there's an idea somehow of a transaction. Are you going to love me if I do this? If
Mhm.
I look like this, how will you feel? If I give you money, how will you feel? Etc. And it's just causing so much disconnection and again, suffering and pain.
Yeah. Interesting story also from back in the day with in India with named Karoli Baba. There's a one of our gang from back then. His name is Larry Brilliant. Actually, um, he's helped get rid of smallpox in India back in
Oh,
the
wow.
early 70s. Yeah, he was a doctor. He is a doctor, and he he said, when I'd be sitting with the group of Westerners around this being, and this being is radiating this kind of an unconditionality, this love, no purpose, no nothing. It's just you're in a pool. He said, "Well, that made sense to me. That's what he should be doing. That's his job." But the weird thing for me, he said, is I felt completely at one with all of the
Mm.
people that were sitting. I was sitting in the midst of. I loved every one of them, and that it really speaks to what you were just talking about, where that resides in all of us. And it's Ramana Maharshi, a great saint in India, said, "God, Guru, and Self are one."
Mm.
And yeah, I think that's a great premise. Um, Here's a quote from. You have some great quotes in the book too. I love
Thank you.
them. Yeah, I love them. This is from Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese monk who died not that long ago, a number of years ago. With understanding, you can restore peace and harmony in yourself and in your relationships with others. You'll know how to act and how to react with intelligence. I love that. Act and react with intelligence, which mostly it's very difficult for many of us to do that, so that you are no longer in a war zone, a zone of conflict. If there's peace and harmony in you, the other person will recognize it, and peace and harmony between both of you will be restored quickly. Great, great quote, right? And I guess, restoring peace and harmony in yourself, that's probably the key to everything that we're discussing here, no?
Yes, that's, I talk a lot about in the book. There was a psychoanalyst in the 50s named Heinz Kohut, and he
Mm.
said that that language is so limited and communication is not perfect. And so all of our relationships are typified by rupture and repair. And that those of us that are able to have loving relationships are able to do the repair. That rupture is okay. It happens, miscommunication, misunderstandings. How can we repair it? And part of that rupture and repair also occurs within. It's like you said, the restoring the peace and harmony. How can we repair? How can we even notice when there's a rupture? And there's so many ways in. You were talking about there's a Hindu way and the Buddhist way, and there's a million ways in, but we're going to the same place. And so some of us, for me, it helped me to be able to see my obstacles. And then when I could see them through practice, and what took for me was a lot of kindness, because I had so much shame.
Mm.
So, I couldn't go in the route of like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this unkind, I speak unkindly. I got to get rid of that. I couldn't see it because it was too painful. I was too ashamed of it. So I had to go in a route of, I'm going to give myself loving kindness. May I be safe. May you be safe. May we be safe. And then slowly those obstacles revealed themselves, and it was easier to let them go, you know? And then other people, they do it, there's different approaches. But for me, that softness through the metta practice, really that enabled that peace and harmony to be restored, even though I didn't know I was directly doing that. It was very indirect.
Mm. I just recently, I've seen this and heard about this experiment I think a Japanese person did with water. They would have two different experiments. One where you thought kind things and sent them into this inanimate thing, which isn't inanimate. And then you said nasty things. This is all inside yourself. And then they had a way to measure it. And for sure, I was like, I don't know exactly what they would have called it. Curdled wouldn't have been exactly the scientific term, but probably the right understanding. And the beneficial thoughts completely turned the water into bliss. It was market what happened. So then, I started, and I did start to listen to how you're just, mind as you're even driving a car and seeing somebody and reacting off of input that's coming into you one way or the other. And it's amazing, isn't it, when you start to really look at that and the level of criticism, however subtle it may be, is actually mind-blowing, you know.
Yes. Yes. And that um, I was talking with someone about, now we're interacting, we're actually talking to computers, AI, Alexa,
Yeah.
the cloud, Siri,
Yeah.
and how I was saying it's important to speak to them kindly, with gentleness, with patience, and I was, why would you do that, Kim? It doesn't matter to them. The imprints are on you. And so, as you said, we're constantly in our own minds hearing criticism, getting it communicated to us, and negativity and bias and all kinds of confusions. And so this rewiring of our own minds, it's between me and me, to be able to start to notice that, start to soften to it.
Mm.
Um, and causes and conditions are going to come together. It's going to arise again. And how can I meet it? Oh, there it is. It's okay. May I be safe? May you be safe?
Yeah, the beauty of metta. I'm so bad when I was doing these, going up and doing courses with Sharon long time ago. I would say to her, I don't want to do metta. It's just, I can't do it. It's kind of distracting for me. I want to go for the, completely one-pointed insight and then go into insights. Sharon, she just laughed at me. And then basically, of course, this was an important practice for Ram Dass in particular, because it was so much part of his makeup to share loving kindness. So it is a great way. It took me quite a while to figure this out, to to do what you just said, which is to be able to treat yourself. Start. If you can't be kind to yourself, you certainly aren't going to be kind to anybody else, or as kind, shall we say, as you might be. You know. I guess the other thing, another great quote from a good friend is, everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that and all will be well. Jack Kornfield. Yeah, why don't you talk about that? Because, it's inimitable to being able to move forward in our lives to more harmony, peace, and love and
Yeah.
understanding.
I mean, I think that when I got married in my 40s, it was really hard for me to have close relationships. I get close enough, and I talk about that a little bit in the book. And part of that was, I remember when I was thinking of getting married to my now husband, uh, I said to a friend, well, why would I want to do that? It's all going to end. Even if we are very happy, one of us will die. It's all going to end, you know? And part of, I think, the wisdom aspect of all these practices, the truth of our lives being endings and making peace with that, it brings a real poignancy to our love, a real respect, with the knowledge that, it doesn't last. Nothing lasts. That's neither bad nor good, actually. That's just the nature of this realm. And so, how can we have so much appreciation for ourselves and each other, for the fact that we even met and, here we are together? I think it really can uh, help us let go of smaller things or things that may seem um, less important, when you really can just see, gosh, yes, it's all going to come and go. It's all going to end. How can I do it with grace, with openness?
How do you make peace with change, right? This is
Yeah.
something we mainly try to avoid at all costs. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, and it's probably not. I used to think or say, wow, the culture in the East, the people, they have so much more acceptance there because they really are living the essence of karma and what that means, of what happens beyond this body. There's not this nihilistic ending, so many different versions of what that is. But, you just, the going forward really does what Jack said is so true. How do you make peace with the reality of impermanence? Um, the biggest thing around impermanence is definitely our relation to the deepest part of ourselves. And I was going to say, I was going to do another plug here, but because this is Jack, it turns out Jack comes to our winter retreats we used to do with Ram Dass while he was alive, and we still do them in Maui. And he and Trudy come, and along with Krishnadas and others. And I had an idea to do something which I called love and impermanence. And I thought, okay, let me see what Jack thinks. Because I generally do that. He's got such a great mind. And he came back and said, how about love amidst impermanence? Which is way more right on. It's how we interface with ourselves around this day-to-day reality of change in so many different ways, in every different way. And that's the insert, to be able to have the perspective, in my mind, that allows us that releases us from the the glue of our story, our thoughts, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I really love that from him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking when you were talking, I had a supervisor back when I was training to be a therapist, and she said to me, "You know, Kim, life is not circumstantial." And I thought, what does she mean by that? But that's what we're talking about here. You know, love amidst change. You know, it's all going to change. Good, bad, strange. We can count on it all changing. And yet, can we stay as these circumstances change? Can we stay steady? Can we have that open heartedness of loving, you know? And that, I think, for me at least, that's the path. You know, how do I do that? Walking into each moment that's different from the last, and not know it, being surprised sometimes in negative ways, and to meet it with peace, to meet it with wisdom, to meet it with kindness.
Yeah, kindness being the key word. We are not kind to ourselves a lot of the time, some of the time. Yeah. The other thing that I picked up on in the book, Kim, is which I think is something I share with people is extremely important, I believe, which is intention. And in Buddhism, it's called sankappa, the underlying motivation that drives our speech, behavior, and even our thoughts. Everything we do is directed by our intention, which is why wise intention is one of the disciplines of the Eightfold Path. And I love how you mentioned Sylvia Boorstein, a great meditation teacher. She calls it the guide that points us in the right direction and brings us back on course when we lose our way. Wise intention. So maybe, yeah, talk a little bit about it from your own experience. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always learned it, as you probably did, as the listeners are experiencing probably too, um, as just what I believed was creating an action. That's what my intention is. And so if I say something or do something, um, I must have an intention behind it, and it's, you know, usually positive or beneficial. And yet, many of my actions might be unkind or indifferent or unmindful, you know, not skillful. And so when I came to this path, intention is so emphasized. Um, and not only is it emphasized, you can develop it, you can strengthen it. First, you have to figure out what it is, you know, and that takes mindfulness and some kindness. And like I said, I had a lot of shame. So, you know, there would be times when I don't know, I was going to call someone, and my intention was to see how they were. But actually, if I sat and got honest with myself and felt my heart, that wasn't it. You know, it was I wanted something from them. I wanted to look like a good person, whatever it was,
Mm.
you know.
Mhm.
And so first it was really, at least for me and many of us, to understand what an intention is. That it's not just an impulse, and it's not just some sort of intuition. It's actually something uh, we can clarify for ourselves and then develop. And we develop it um, by being conscious about it and through these practices. And so, loving kindness is said to really help with intention because, you know, traditionally the way metta is taught is you repeat these phrases. They're phrases of benefit. You know, may you be safe, may you be happy. And so you can see, you know, the brain scientists talk about it in terms of rewiring. You know, we're rewiring our
Mm.
habits of
Mm.
mind. And so we are strengthening an intention to meet things with kindness, to meet things with wisdom, to meet each other with a little bit more openness. And in the Buddhist tradition, everybody talks about karma so much and the outcome of our actions. But from a Buddhist view, it's not the outcome that determines whether it's positive or negative karma. It's actually the intention. So that really struck me, and it made sense to me because, well, not everything is in my control or your control. So sometimes the outcomes aren't what you'd like, but sometimes you really had a true intention for something to go well or something to be not harming. And even when it doesn't, the intention really counts. It matters. The last couple of years, I have been using intention as when I've gotten upset or angry about politics, about family. I will stop and actually say to myself, Kim, what's your intention here? And then allow that to dictate an action, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to do. Maybe sometimes the intention is to create harmony. I might say nothing, because that is what is dictated by that orientation.
Mhm. Mindfulness is great if it's used from what Ram Dass called the loving awareness, this from the center of our being, rather than the judgy mind. Because when people do it's absolutely, of course, useless. When it's done from a place where you've taken some breaths in to the center of your being and you can really just be, then you can absolutely see how that intention is working. You have an intention, and there's manipulation possibly going on. There's outcomes that want to happen as a result of this intention, particularly in the workplace and certainly in the relationship place as well. And you start to see that. So that's why I talked about Ram Dass's loving awareness, because that allows you to be in a place when you do see that you are not going to kill yourself, right? With shame. And how could I be trying to manipulate somebody like that? I mean, to get an outcome that's good for me, you can actually, and you've been speaking to this here quite often, which is kindness. You can, that is always present. We are fundamentally good, and that is always present to be able to share that with oneself, to shed that kindness, so that when we realize through mindfulness the multifaceted exchange that we are expecting from something, from someone, from whatever, then that will go a long way to releasing these intentions that are so self-serving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Beautiful. I mean, when you were, I was thinking that so many students, like people who aren't familiar with meditation or metta meditation that I work with, will often in a group, we'll start with, let's set an intention. So they set an intention, and I will say, well, that intention is evidence of your kindness, of your wholesomeness, of your goodness. And it always surprises me how much that moves people,
Yeah.
because many of us just, we have such a focus on all the things we screw up. And just to be able to say, oh, well, I have an intention not to suffer. I have an intention to speak more kindly to others. That's so valuable and meaningful too.
Mm. Yeah. Another thing you talk about is around relational wounds, which are core to our neurotic tendencies and habitual patterns, are mended through healthy relationships. And, this is a big part of this course I was speaking to earlier in this conversation, intimacy with all things. And one of the things is exploring your connection. It's a 10-day thing. By the way, it's starting on April. I think around the 21st. Go, sign up to ramdas.org, everybody, and get a newsletter which will let you know when it's happening. Exploring your connection with friends, teachers, how you can take refuge in community and find meaningful support. And so you're saying this exactly there. I think it's one of the biggest, it's a great methodology for helping change our patterns, for sure. It is certainly part of what the neurosciences call, being able to change your brain, period.
Yeah. I mean, I can't, I mentioned I was having panic attacks, and then I started, training with Buddhists. And I had this kind of secret idea that if I trained in this way and, became aware and awake, then I could skip over the relational part. I would just, go to the ultimate.
Yeah.
Raghu. I
Yes.
didn't need to
I'm
be here,
familiar.
Oh,
Kim.
oh my goodness. It was what a disappointment and such a gift
Mm.
to realize you cannot skip over that. It's here. This is it. We're having it. How do we do it well? How do we do it with kindness? How do we do it with openness? And how, like you said, and we're affecting each other in every moment with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Will you tell me more about that?
What's that?
Will you tell me more about that, about your experience with wanting to get?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, give me a little bit of credit that I was in the, early 20s when I went to India and spent that time with Ram Dass and Maharaj-ji, we called him, in Karoli Baba. And I actually developed this story that I must have been a sadhu, right? A wandering mendicant in past lives, wandering around, because not everybody, everything and everybody felt familiar to me. I was more comfortable there than I had been. I'm from Canada, about to be the 52nd state soon, and I felt more at home in India than anywhere else. So I had this whole story around being a sadhu, right? And I had no interest in getting married or, having a traditional trajectory that one has in the West. And of course, being around this being meant being around absolute, unadorned truth. And I was married maybe within a year by him to the mother of my children. And I have had to, and even after that, for probably a decade or two, I struggled with the fact that I had this fixation similar to what you just expressed. Okay, I'm going for the brass ring of complete non-attachment, and the world is BS, and I'm not interested in. Actually, one of the things that happened to me in India at that time, I got very fortunate because being from Canada, I had the person I worked at a radio station in Montreal. He was friendly with the Canadian High Commissioner in India who invited me to lunch because I needed to get a passport. That's a whole other story about how Neem Karoli Baba told me everything that was going to happen the next day that I went. Anyhow, I ended up in a room with Kalu Rinpoche, one of the great Rinpoches of the last century. And in it, I he's, he let me ask questions. So, and I said, I'm really struggling here. I mean, in the mountains, meditating, it's all good. But now I'm in Delhi and it's like, oh God, I can't keep my center in any way, something like that, whatever I said. And he looked at me and he said, so I said, do you have to stay in the mountains, and in a cave, so to speak? And he said, he used the examples of, I think, 7 siddhas from in India, all became realized through work. One was a weaver, one made clay cups, one, all of everything you could think of. They did it through their work. He said it is not necessary to live in a cave. So that gave me a little bit of leverage to understand that reality. And again, I was very young, early 20s, but still, I still today look at that. Now I have a much better sense of humor about these kinds of stories and thoughts than I did a long time ago, which, by the way, everybody, is a great aspect of getting older. You stop taking yourself so self-seriously. Yeah,
It's
that's what
also the fruits of your practice, Raghu. You do.
Good karma that I met this being is how I'll attribute all of it. And before we're getting close to the end, and I did want to, I had something here and we've been talking about Sharon, and I want to quote from her I loved, which has a lot to do with what's going on in our world right now. Respecting differences while gaining insight into our essential connectedness, we can free ourselves from the impulse to rigidly categorize the world in terms of narrow boundaries and labels. And it led me, here's another plug. There's a new book from Ram Dass, posthumous, the first book since he left 5 years ago and change. And it's called There Is No Other. And of course, this was something he taught about over many, many years. Sharon's, to me, a living embodiment of somebody who does not get caught into these polarized kinds of ways of seeing the world. And isn't that such an important part of what we need to be addressing in our personal lives, within ourselves, because we're doing it within ourselves, right? And certainly being able to express that in our outer lives so that we're not going to get caught in this extraordinary moment of separation.
Yeah, disconnection.
Yep.
I mean, I get caught up at times. There are things that I really disagree with that I feel are very harmful that are happening in many different ways.
Yeah.
And wisdom tells us we all want to be safe. We all do want to be happy. We all don't want to suffer. And that's true. That's true even from these people I know are doing harm. But I don't have to hate them or think I think there's a misperception that I have to hate them or to be angry at them to do my best to stop them. And I don't think that's true. And I don't think that it's one or the other. I think I can say, I love you, and no, I recognize, you're dangerous, and no, you want to be safe and happy. I understand that. And you're going to jail or whatever it is. And I'm saying that not because I think that's like, oh, I'm a saint and everybody should be up on this thing, but I suffer less. And I have a lot more clarity when I come from that view. and the view isn't, oh, you're a monster,
Yeah. No, it's a big waste of time. I do enter into it myself, just reacting in all the different ways that are easy to react to. Ram Dass put his picture up on his altar and said, I am not putting it there in order to worship. What I'm speaking to is the soul, is that being that is not taking these actions as a result of this incarnation, which I'm sorry this happened to you. That's how we looked at it. I used to say, there's no way on earth, Ram Dass, I'm putting a picture of him on my altar, okay? You're more advanced. Oh, boy. Here's the book, by the way, everybody.
Beautiful.
Happy Relationships. It's got lots of great insights that will help. So I thank you for being here, Kimberly. And there'll be a link. They'll put a link to the book in the show notes. The book is out, is it not?
It is out.
Yeah.
Raghu, it was what a pleasure to meet you. Thank you. I know of
same
your
here.
work, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
And I'm sorry that my podcast partner fell asleep.
Oh my God, so cute.
She's here, everybody.
So cute. I saw her getting up there. What a nice company.
Everybody, appreciate you being here, and thank you again, Kim. And this is Mindrolling on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com and take advantage of many of the people that we have in common, Kimberly and I, starting with Sharon, but Joseph and Jack and Ram Dass and Krishna Das and Krishnamurti is also on the network, and so is Alan Watts. We've got a corner on all these great minds, and we will see you next week.